Good afternoon. We have assembled a group of filmmakers and producers today to talk about women in film, particularly women in film in the Arab world. So I'd like to introduce you to the panelists. Wafa. Wafa Tajdin is a producer. Amirah Tajdin, Nadia, and Darine. So, I would really like to start with the four of you possibly introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about the work that you do and have done. Darine, yeah? You're going to go this way?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Aisha, for the intro. My name is Darine Hotait. I'm a writer and film director based in New York. And I'm also the founder of Cinephilia Productions, an incubator project for the development of MENA region filmmakers.
Nadia?
Hi, my name is Nadia Eliewat. I am a film producer, screenwriter, and professor. I produced 2 feature films for theatrical release, and I teach at the American University in Dubai.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to listen to us today. My name is Wafa Tajdin. I'm a film producer. I own and run 730 Films with my sister, Amirah. I produce, she directs, but I'll let her talk for herself in a minute. And we work between here and Africa, producing commercials and narrative and documentary work.
Hi, I'm Amirah Tajdin, writer, director, and an artist, sometimes.
I want to start off by basically, in the Western world, we hear a lot about how the ratio of women to men in the industry is much lower. Within the Arab world, it's not the same. There are far more women working within the industry, and I was wondering what your opinions are on what some of those reasons might be. Do you want to start, maybe Nadia?
It's true. It's in the Arab world, it's a bit different. Most of my friends, my producer friends, are females basically, and I think it's interesting because in our part of the world, filmmaking there's a misconception about it, that it's something that is not for males because it's not money generating. And you know, in our culture, people who study, parents, families prefer their sons to study things that are more economically rewarding, in terms of they want them to be doctors, or like speaking about Jordan, for example, they want their sons to be doctors and engineers. Everybody wants that. So you'll have more females in this domain. I also speak from my experience as a professor, because most of my class would be like, if I have 15 students, sometimes I wouldn't have any male students and all females, and sometimes I only have one male. And that's, I think, again, back to the culture and the idea of males should, you know, provide, maybe.
But Wafa, sometimes you have slightly differing opinions about that, and maybe if you want to go into some of the things that you feel.
Yeah, I think our experience is a bit different because we also have we also lived in Kenya is part of our heritage as well, so that's where we formed our working relationship and where we essentially started out properly on what we do. And that's even far less developed than the industry is here in the Middle East. And as women going into it there, that was like, there was no women doing, especially in the directing and the creative roles. Again, you would find producers. Female producers are a lot more common, but directors and on more the sort of like senior creative roles, it was just harder for Amirah to break in. However, when we moved back to the Middle East, when we moved back to Dubai about 3 years ago, and particularly I'm talking about our commercial work, it's been a lot easier for us to break in and to sort of be more accepted in these roles. And again, more so for Amirah as a director, I'm speaking here in that regard.
So in terms of directing, you think it's sometimes easier for you to sort of win projects, especially in the commercial realm, because you're a woman? Or
No, I think it comes down to, I mean, it's hard. Something happened this morning where somebody mistook work that I directed for a male director, and he won the job based off my work. So luckily I have a producer who backs me up, and it was kind of resolved. But the fact that, you know, it's just, I think it's a trust thing, and that's what comes down to the gender, the difference in gender in the film industry. And whether you're producers or you're directors or you're writers, from a commercial perspective, and even, I mean, we work in independent cinema as well, you always have financiers or clients or agencies trusting a man just a bit faster than they would trust a woman. And I mean, I've been on set where I've had 6, I'm gonna say it, white men standing behind me, you know, making sure I know what I'm doing, or asking my white male DOP questions that they should be asking me as a director. And you know, I have to, all in my 5'2" glory, stand there and be like, well, I'm the director actually. And you know, you hope that your work speaks for itself at some point, but it's always going to be an uphill battle, whether I'm directing work here or in Africa or in South America. And you know, yeah, it's a challenge.
And Darine, you do most of your work out of the States. So do you find that there might be a slight difference to the working practices there compared to the region?
Yeah, I mostly worked in the States as a filmmaker, and I really rarely worked as a filmmaker in the region. But I worked with other female directors and filmmakers in the region, and I felt that there aren't the issues of like equal pay like there is in the States. But there are other issues being a female filmmaker where you're not able to tell every story you want to tell. There are those boundaries and expectations from you that you should be representing female characters in a specific way, within a specific dimension. So I think that's one of the, that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is what I can say is how to fight the Orientalist character that we have to present for Western audiences. So these are kind of the two challenges that I sensed.
So I want to just go back to something that Nadia mentioned, as well as you and Amirah. It's in terms of money generating, funding, and to a certain extent, equal pay. It's never easy getting funding for a filmmaker, and I think that applies to both male or female filmmakers. So how do you all survive, basically?
Survive, you mean, how do we?
Do you have a day job?
Yeah. Personally, I do. I think I would like to produce full time, but I also love education, and I think I managed to find my balance. On a personal level, I hate doing commercials. It's great for people who can do it, but personally, I find it very difficult to create commercials or do promotional videos. This is why I decided to take a full-time job in education, so I can still provide for myself, work and produce full-time. And this is how I managed to produce 2 feature films within the past 7 years. I think if I didn't have my full-time job, I would not have been able to really produce these projects because of the lack of support, because I'm getting a lot of support from my university in terms of time off, flexibility, and also I feel it helps me become a better professor because you're teaching from your, own experience. But just going back to the funding, I think funding in our region is difficult regardless if you're a male or a female. So it's a challenge for a filmmaker, full stop, regardless of your gender.
And both Darine, Wafa, and Amirah, you're all working on feature-length projects right now. How are you all developing those projects, and where are you looking at for sources of funding?
Well, the feature we're working on, we've been developing for the last 2 years, and we're going to the traditional sources of funding for independent cinema that are available to us, which is primarily European funders. The subject matter of our film, unfortunately, means that we've sort of like taken ourselves out of Arab funding options as far as all the conversations we've had. But if anybody wants to talk to us about it later, we can talk to you about it, and we'll let you know what it's about, just in case you want to give us some money. But it's just it's the traditional stuff. So we're in talks with people from France, Germany, the usual sort of like co-producing routes for any sort of like first-time independent feature. And the added challenge to our film is that we're actually shooting it in Kenya. So, and there's no infrastructure in place there, so there's a lot more fundraising we have to do to ensure we have the right crew come in, et cetera, et cetera. So that's sort of like how we're doing it. And we're sustaining ourselves in the meantime by doing commercial work, which we love to do. Sometimes.
And what options?
I've been working on my debut project for quite some time. I didn't really pick the easiest project to start with. So it's been quite challenging in the financing process. So that's where we're at, still trying to find funds to make the film happen, and searching everywhere because the film can speak to international audiences, so it has that potential.
And Nadia, with the 2 films that you produced, where were your main sources of funding from?
Okay, they were funded differently. The first project was mainly because at that stage I was just finishing my school studies, and I teamed up with my friend Fadi Haddad, who's the writer-director of the film titled When Mona Lisa Smiled. And at that stage we funded entirely most of it through the Royal Film Commission of Jordan. They had an edu feature film fund at that stage, and we got support. We had an executive producer, Nadine Touan, who helped through her connections to get things for free and to get us some in kind. The second feature that I co-wrote and produced for co-writer-director Sophie Boutros was mainly equity financing, a bit of product placement, and co-production with ART TV, so we sold the TV rights. So I think each project has its uniqueness, and based on the talent, the resources around the talent, and the type of story, you fund differently.
And to touch upon sort of like the more sort of creative aspects of filmmaking in the region, do you feel, well, I'll start with Amirah, do you feel that as a woman that you're supposed to film a certain way, or do projects about certain topics or issues?
Well, I think the blessing of having started my commercial career out in Dubai is Dubai's a new city, and I think it's open to new narratives, and we get to be part of that. So we're kind of writing our own rules. I mean, even this is me talking outside of commercial directing, and I mean, we've made a few little films around the city that kind of just show it in a different way. I mean, I grew up here, I went to high school here, so for me the city holds an important part of my artistic voice. And whether you're giving back on how you're re-showing the city, or how you're representing it as a director, I think the whole idea of being a woman doing it has not come up yet. And for some reason I seem to get very male-driven stories to direct. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, gender is a big part of my work as well, and thematically. So you get to play, and I think that's what you would want everyone to take away as a director out here as well, and just see it beyond gender, because we can, independently at least.
And Darine, with your project, it's science fiction, is that correct? Do you sometimes get sort of odd looks that you want to do a project like that? Do you find that people think it's strange that as a woman you'd want to do a science fiction project?
I don't personally find it strange. I find the reaction from
That's
people
what I meant,
strange.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a female filmmaker making a sci-fi film. What is she thinking as her debut? And that's been actually the thing that I'm hearing for the past 5 years. So I kind of got used to it, and I formulated my answers to that in a way. So it's been kind of the practice of knowing how to answer that, and at the same time to convince people that they have to change their mind about, what female director can and can't do in a way. Yeah.
Okay, and because we have to wrap up pretty soon, I just want maybe each of you to go over and just sort of explain if you think there have been instances where actually being a woman has helped your career as a whole. You can start whichever way you want.
Sometimes I think when you're on set, people are, for example, in Jordan, we were shooting when Melissa smiled, and we were shooting in an area that is a little bit difficult in terms of the community. And sometimes men in this area get irritated when other men talk to them. So being a woman, they're always, when you go ask them for something, they're embarrassed, and then like, Arasi, of course, yeah, we'll do this for you. And so that, I think, was useful.
Yeah. Wafa?
I don't have to carry any heavy stuff on set.
But as a producer, you shouldn't anyway, right?
That's, for me, that's, I think, really, I think it's, for me, I think it's an industry that has a long way to go in terms of women and their place and having that same respect and sort of like reverence that men hold. So that's my 2 cents. I could go into other details, but I think that'll be a bit too controversial. So for now, that's it.
I think as a writer as well, being allowed the voice as a woman to see things, and it does play into it. We do see the world differently. It's just a fact. And I think that has seeped into my work in a way that maybe I'm telling stories in a different way because of that, even though I'm tackling male-driven subjects or sci-fi or what women are not supposed to direct. And I think maybe it's the antithesis of being a woman that's been the easiest part of being a woman in this industry, if that makes sense. But yeah, I guess you figure it out every day, and you kind of, but yeah, the charm works too. We've gotten on highways with cameras hanging out the car, and all you have to do is smile a little because you're a girl and your crew sends you out to do that. And we're like, I'm the director, guys, don't make me do that. They're like, well, you have to if you want the shot. So, yeah.
They've mentioned every single thing that could be on that list.
So sometimes it is helpful.
It is helpful.
Just before we go, are there any things that you think particularly women would struggle with? And I don't know, Wafa, probably you have the most strongest views on that.
I don't know if it's necessarily the strongest view. I believe we're all sort of, we've all had our experiences. And like we spoke about earlier, it's not always gender-based. I don't want to sound like I'm man-bashing, but yeah, there's a lot of progress that needs to be made, but we're lucky that we have platforms like this where we can dialogue and speak openly now, and I'm glad that we're evolving in that direction. And I think it's very important for us as women in the industry, because without certain female mentor, a female mentor, Amirah and I would have maybe never even gotten into film the way we did. So I think it's important for us to just keep that cycle going, and wherever we see opportunity in younger girls wanting to come up into the industry, I think that's where we have to start being active and mentoring and helping and making sure the industry grows, the female side of the industry grows with us, and at least make sure we leave that legacy. I think for me that's what I'm looking at as my next step, and hopefully it makes a difference to someone and people somewhere. Yeah.
Does anyone have anything?
Yeah, I think if to have this argument, to take the argument to the next level, if we had a woman in the film industry who works in the technical team, let's say a cinematographer, that would have been a much bigger challenge than being a female director everywhere in the world, because there's this idea about women can't do certain things that are technical or that require certain specifics. So I think that would have been a very interesting.
Or also a gaffer or a grip.
Absolutely, gaffer. I haven't seen a woman gaffer on any shoot I've been on in the region. Though.
Yeah.
Actually, just to add to this point, our DOP on Mahbas was a female, Rachel On, and her first AC was also a female, Mary Werde, and they were amazing, you know. It's
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
And there was no
Because
difference.
maybe you were the main team, you were female.
I think that's it. We have to wrap up now. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, ladies, for sharing your
Thank you.
insights and experiences with us as well.